It started as an ordinary morning in Hong Kong. Sunlight glinting off glass towers, the hum of traffic echoing across the harbor, and a young woman whose life seemed carved from perfection. Abby Choi, 28 years old, model, influencer, mother of 4. The embodiment of grace and success. She moved between photo shoots, charity events, and luxury dinners, smiling in every frame, adored by more than 100,000 followers online. But within 72 hours, her name would no longer shine in fashion headlines. It would scream from police bulletins and breaking news banners around the world. Her disappearance began with a single missed call and ended in a rented house on the edge of Tai Po, where detectives found a refrigerator, a meat grinder, and a pot simmering with an unspeakable secret. This isn't just a story of murder. It's a story of how greed, betrayal, and silent hatred can rot a family from the inside. How love can turn into something monstrous.
Stay until the end, because what happened to Abby Choi could happen to anyone who trusts the wrong people. On the morning of February 21st, 2023, Hong Kong woke up to its usual rhythm. Busy streets, high-end cars, and a skyline bathed in soft light. Among the millions starting their day was Abby Choi Tin Fung, a 28-year-old model and socialite admired for her elegance and generosity. She had built a life of luxury, owning expensive properties, attending elite fashion shows in Paris, and raising 4 children with grace and confidence. That morning, Abby told her assistant she had a quick meeting with her former brother-in-law, Anthony Kwong, to discuss school arrangements for her children. She left her home wearing a white outfit, calm and radiant as always. But after that moment, she was never seen alive again. When Abby's family couldn't reach her by phone, they grew anxious. Calls went straight to voicemail, messages unread. By nightfall, they reported her missing.
Hong Kong police immediately launched a search, but nothing could have prepared them for what they would uncover. Detectives began tracing her last movements. CCTV footage showed her entering a car registered to her ex-husband's family. At first glance, it seemed routine, until the vehicle's signal vanished near Tai Po, a quiet district far from the city center. Inside that area, officers discovered a rented 2-story house, its windows covered with paper, curtains sealed shut. It didn't look like anyone lived there. Yet, in the small kitchen, something felt terribly wrong. There were knives, chains, and a large stainless steel pot on the stove. The air smelled of bleach. When investigators opened the refrigerator, they found what no one could comprehend. Remains that would later be confirmed as parts of Abby Choi's body. The glamorous world she built had collapsed into horror, and as police dug deeper, one truth began to surface. This was not a random killing.
It was a plan, one born from greed, resentment, and betrayal within her own family. February 21st, 2023. It was supposed to be an ordinary Tuesday. Abby Choi had plans that day, meetings, family errands, and a visit to her children. She told her assistant she would meet her ex-husband's brother, Anthony Kwong, for a quick discussion about transportation for the kids. "I'll be back soon," she said before leaving. Those were her last known words. By afternoon, her phone went silent. Texts stopped delivering. When evening came and she didn't return home, her current husband and friends began to worry.
Abby was punctual, responsible, never the type to vanish without a word. Her assistant made several frantic calls, all unanswered. The next morning, her disappearance made headlines. The Hong Kong police force began what they thought would be a standard missing person investigation. They started with CCTV footage, mapping every movement she made that day. Cameras captured Abby entering a white 7-seater car in the Kowloon area. The driver was identified as Anthony Kwong, her ex-brother-in-law. She looked calm, unaware of what awaited her. Hours later, the vehicle was seen near the rural district of Tai Po, then disappeared off the grid. Her phone's GPS went dark around the same time. Detectives knew something was wrong. It wasn't a simple runaway or an accident. They interviewed her ex-husband, Alex Kwong, who appeared nervous and evasive. He claimed he hadn't seen Abby in days, insisting their relationship was fine. But officers noticed inconsistencies in his timeline. Investigators discovered that Alex's father, Kwong Kao, a former police officer, had rented a small house in Tai Po just weeks earlier, under false pretenses, claiming it was for storage. When police visited the address, the windows were covered with paper, and surveillance cameras had been removed. A strange, heavy silence surrounded the property. Neighbors said they rarely saw anyone enter, except for a man who arrived at night carrying bags. Abby's family begged for answers, while the police intensified their search. Behind the calm surface of Hong Kong's glittering skyline, a chilling truth was beginning to emerge. Abby Choi had not disappeared by accident. She had been led into a carefully prepared trap. February 24th, 2023. 3 days after Abby Choi vanished, the city's tabloids buzzed with speculation. A missing celebrity, a vanishing act, whispers of foul play. But while the media searched for gossip, detectives were tracing every thread of digital evidence. A breakthrough came when police analyzed GPS data from the white 7-seater vehicle. The signal had stopped in a remote area of Lungmei Chun, Tai Po, a quiet fishing village surrounded by trees and narrow roads. Officers moved in to investigate the small 2-story house, recently rented by Kwong Kao, Abby's former father-in-law. When they arrived, the air was thick with a chemical stench. Inside, the rooms were nearly empty. No furniture, no personal belongings. Only the kitchen was in use. There, under dim light, officers found a refrigerator, a meat grinder, an electric saw, and a large stainless steel pot half filled with soup. On the counter lay face masks, gloves, and black plastic bags. The floor was stained, hastily scrubbed. Detective Superintendent Alan Chung later told reporters, "It was clear this place was prepared to dispose of a human body. As investigators opened the refrigerator, they froze. Inside were 2 legs wrapped in cloth, later confirmed to be Abby Choi's. On the stove, in the pot, they discovered a human skull and ribs, boiled beyond recognition. DNA tests soon proved what everyone feared.
The remains belonged to Abby, the glamorous woman seen smiling at Paris Fashion Week was now reduced to fragments in a pot. Officers stepped outside in shock. One described the scene as the most horrifying case Hong Kong has seen in decades. Reporters later called the house the butcher's flat. Meanwhile, forensic teams found financial documents and property deeds near the crime scene, linking the murder to a motive far darker than jealousy. Abby hadn't just been killed. She had been eliminated to erase her control over millions in assets. What began as a missing person case had now turned into a murder investigation of nightmarish proportions, and the hunt for her killers was about to begin. By the time forensic results confirmed Abby Choi's identity, the Hong Kong police force had already mobilized its Major Crimes Bureau. What they uncovered next revealed a chilling level of calculation and a betrayal that began within her own family. Investigators traced the rental contract of the Tai Po Butcher House. It was signed by Kwong Kao, Abby's ex-father-in-law, a former police officer familiar with investigative tactics. He had rented the property just weeks before the murder. The house had no furniture, no personal effects, only tools, cleaning supplies, and cooking equipment. Every detail pointed to a premeditated killing. Meanwhile, surveillance footage showed Anthony Kwong, Abby's ex-brother-in-law, purchasing an electric saw, a meat grinder, and cleaning chemicals days before she disappeared. Receipts confirmed the dates, February 17th and 18th. Detectives also found that Abby's ex-husband, Alex Kwong, had emptied several joint bank accounts in the days leading up to her death. He had also been avoiding debt collectors, nearly 5 million Hong Kong dollars owed. The motive was crystallizing: money and revenge. Police launched a citywide manhunt. On February 25th, officers arrested Kwong Kao, his wife Jenny Lee, and son Anthony at their Sham Tseng apartment. The trio offered conflicting stories. The mother claimed ignorance, the father stayed silent. Hours later, Alex Kwong tried to flee the city by speedboat, carrying 500,000 Hong Kong dollars in cash and luxury watches worth over 4 million Hong Kong dollars. He was captured at Tung Chung Pier after a brief chase. Inside the police van, Alex said nothing, but his shaking hands and bloodshot eyes told the story. He knew the game was over. At a press conference, Detective Superintendent Chung described the group's actions as organized, deliberate, and driven by greed. The motive was rooted in a bitter property dispute. Abby had reportedly planned to sell a luxury apartment that was registered under her ex-father-in-law's name, effectively cutting off their access to millions. For the police, the arrests brought relief. For the public, it brought horror. The thought that a family could slaughter their daughter-in-law over money left Hong Kong stunned. But even then, the case was far from over, because the full truth of Abby's death and what happened in that house had yet to be revealed. As police pieced together the evidence, a horrifying picture of betrayal and greed began to emerge. The murder of Abby Choi wasn't an act of rage or sudden impulse. It was a carefully engineered plan, carried out by the people who once called her family. Investigators reconstructed the timeline. In early February 2023, Abby had informed her ex-husband's family that she planned to sell a luxury apartment worth tens of millions of Hong Kong dollars, property that had been legally purchased under her ex-father-in-law's name for tax purposes.
She wanted the proceeds to go toward her children's future. That decision enraged Kwang Kao, the former cop. To him, Abby was taking back what was his. Behind closed doors, he began planning her murder. He enlisted his sons, Alex and Anthony, and his wife, Jenny, instructing them to lure Abby to a meeting under the pretense of discussing schooling and transportation for the kids. On February 21st, the trap was sprung.
Abby got into the 7-seater van, unaware that the very people she trusted were about to end her life. What happened next remains partially obscured, but police believe she was killed either in the vehicle or shortly after arriving at the Tai Po house. Her body was then dismembered using tools purchased days earlier. The killers tried to destroy evidence by boiling some remains and freezing others, hoping to slow decomposition. They cleaned the walls with bleach and wrapped everything in plastic. Digital forensics later found messages between Alex and his brother, planning how to handle Abby. One chilling text read, "Once she's gone, no one can touch the property." When asked by investigators why they did it, Alex Kwong reportedly broke down and whispered, "It was about money. Always about money." The case's brutality stunned even veteran officers. This wasn't just murder, one detective said. It was a betrayal so cold, it stripped away every trace of humanity.
News of the reconstruction spread like wildfire. Hong Kong, a city proud of its safety and order, now faced a crime scene that felt ripped from a nightmare. But justice, though slow, was closing in. The final stage, the trial and sentencing, would determine the fate of those who had turned love into slaughter. After the arrests, Hong Kong stood still. The headlines were relentless. Socialite murdered by family. Model dismembered in Tai Po. Crowds gathered outside the courthouse, clutching photos of Abby Choi in disbelief. Her smile, once radiant and full of life, now symbolized a nation's grief. The Hong Kong Police Force's Major Crime Bureau began consolidating the mountain of evidence. Forensic analysts spent days reconstructing Abby's final hours through DNA traces, digital footprints, and surveillance footage. Blood splatters on the walls matched her genetic profile. The saw and knives bore microscopic tissue residue. And inside one of the suspect's phones, investigators discovered a chilling list titled "Things to Buy," including gloves, bleach, and black plastic bags. Detectives also found bank transfer records showing attempts by Alex Kwong to move money through intermediaries immediately after Abby vanished. Some of these accounts were traced to his father's associates. The financial trail became as important as the physical evidence, revealing the true scale of the family's motive: greed fueled by desperation. As prosecutors built their case, the suspects remained under heavy security. Alex Kwong, his father Kwang Kao, mother Jenny Lee, and brother Anthony were charged with murder and perverting the course of justice. Two others, Ingchi Wing, the father's mistress, and Irene Pun, a friend accused of harboring Alex, faced lesser charges for aiding and abetting. In court, the defense claimed that the killing was accidental, that Abby fell and hit her head. The courtroom gasped. Prosecutors swiftly dismantled the argument with crime scene photos, autopsy results, and digital evidence. The judge's voice trembled as she read the details. Abby's skull showed signs of blunt force trauma inconsistent with a fall. The dismemberment, she ruled, was systematic and deliberate, intended to conceal the body and erase evidence. During testimony, it was revealed that Kwang Kao, the ex-father-in-law,
had once been a police sergeant. He knew investigative procedures intimately, which explained how meticulously the killers had cleaned the crime scene. Yet, even his experience couldn't hide the truth. One microscopic fingerprint, found on a bleach bottle, linked him directly to the House of Horrors. Outside, Hong Kong mourned. Vigils appeared across the city. Strangers left flowers, candles, and notes that read, "Justice for Abby." The story transcended borders. International outlets from CNN to BBC followed every development.
To many, Abby Choi became a symbol of how wealth and trust can turn into targets for envy and hate.
As the trial neared its end, the courtroom heard one of the most haunting moments of the case, a short recording retrieved from a hidden cloud backup. In the audio, Abby's voice could be heard speaking calmly with Anthony Kwong about settling things peacefully. Minutes later, the audio cut off. The timestamp matched the window during which police believe she was killed. Psychologists later testified that the murder reflected a collective psychopathy within a closed family system, a combination of entitlement, resentment, and dependency on Abby's wealth. They saw her not as family, the psychologists said, but as an obstacle to their comfort. In 2024, after months of proceedings, all 4 primary suspects were formally indicted for murder. Their sentencing awaits final judgment, but the evidence is overwhelming.
Hong Kong's legal system rarely imposes the death penalty, but they face life imprisonment without parole. The trial left a deep scar. Citizens questioned how such evil could brew behind polite family dinners, luxury photos, and designer smiles. Police Commissioner Raymond Siu later stated, "This was not only a crime against a person, but against the conscience of our city." As the court adjourned, Abby's family and close friends stood outside holding candles. Her current husband, Chris Tam, spoke softly to reporters. She was kind, generous, and loved deeply. I just hope her children never forget who their mother truly was, not what they did to her. Even after justice was served, one mystery remained. Investigators never recovered all of Abby's remains. Parts of her body were believed to have been discarded in remote landfills or dissolved beyond identification. The case, though legally concluded, left an emotional void, an ache that words could never heal. On social media, her last post before her death resurfaced. It read, "Grateful for the people who make my life beautiful." It was dated February 19th, 2023, just 2 days before her murder. Thousands of followers commented beneath it, "We're sorry, Abby. You deserve the world." The trial closed, but the echoes of the crime lingered. A chilling reminder that even in a city as modern and safe as Hong Kong, darkness can hide in the most familiar faces. When the courtroom doors finally closed, Hong Kong exhaled, not in relief, but in disbelief. The murder of Abby Choi had ended in convictions, yet the city remained haunted. Her death wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was a mirror held up to society, reflecting how greed and resentment can twist human hearts beyond recognition. In life, Abby represented the modern dream: beauty, fame, wealth, and generosity. She was a daughter, a mother of 4, and a woman who tried to keep peace between 2 families. But in death, she became something far larger. A symbol of how love can be weaponized and trust can become fatal. The Tai Po house was demolished months later, but locals still avoid the narrow road leading to where it once stood. They say that even after the cleanup,
The smell of bleach and iron lingers in the soil, a grim reminder of what happened behind those walls. Journalists and criminologists continue to dissect the case, labeling it one of Hong Kong's darkest domestic betrayals. Forensic experts call it a turning point in how the city views family violence and financial manipulation. Social workers, too, cite it as a wake-up call, proof that wealth does not buy safety, and that the most dangerous threats often come from within. Her children, now under the care of her current husband's family, will one day read the records, the testimonies, the horrors. They'll see that their mother's name, once tied to luxury and glamour, became synonymous with justice.
In the end, the world didn't just mourn Abby Choi. It learned from her story. She reminds us that evil doesn't always wear a stranger's face. Sometimes it hides behind polite smiles, behind shared dinners, behind words like family. If there's one lesson this tragedy leaves behind, it's this. Never underestimate the quiet power of resentment. Guard your heart. Protect your peace. And never ignore the small signs, the discomfort, the manipulation, the jealousy that precede catastrophe. Because every true crime story begins with trust. And every victim, like Abby, once believed they were safe. If you've made it this far, tell us, where are you listening from? Are you driving home, working late, or lying in bed with the lights off? Your thoughts matter. Comment below, share this story, and let us know what lessons you take from it. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true crime stories that uncover the darkness hidden beneath everyday life.